All right. Good morning, everyone. Cool. So, just checking some technical stuff. I've had a new setup done, which you can probably all see. Mitch, good to see you, buddy. All right, cool. So, carrying on, final session. So, I got a few things today to work through. So, we finished on performance identity. So, I said if I stripped away your title, your income, physique, who would you be? Would there be anything left that still feels like you? This was what we went through last week. And, when we look at this, it becomes a really important thing because not many people actually question this. They don't look at it. They don't look at it at all. And write down 3 words that define you, then ask, are these words about what you do or why you exist? Okay, this is very important because I mentioned this is an invisible cage you're in. What you do is not who you are. I think it was Dostoevsky that said the most powerful prison is the one you don't know you're in, something along those lines. Or if you want to keep, no, actually it was, if you want to keep someone in prison, make sure they don't find out they're in prison. Okay, it's really powerful. Doing this work has actually inspired a new version of what I want to do in helping men move from the negative into purpose-based living, which I think is really important because I'd been reflecting on it, why this had come up for me and why I was teaching this, because as I mentioned, I usually keep this for some more advanced stuff, but I decided to bring it into this and I didn't have a plan to bring it into this. But I was talking to my partner yesterday and I said, purpose is really important because it's kept me going through the really difficult times. When my health was really bad, really, really difficult, narcissistically abusive relationship, my father dying, my dog dying, losing all my cash last time. My purpose was the thing that kept me going. It keeps you going. It's the foundation for who we are. And I don't think it's necessarily gender specific. I think it's if women want to do it, by all means do it. And if I think that both sides should have a sense of purpose in the world. But I didn't actually realize the impact that it had had on my ability to keep showing up. And I think it's extremely important. I just did a post with the voice coach that I'm going to start working with soon when I get some time. I've got so much other stuff going on, named Vin. He's a Vietnamese dude, phenomenal speaker, absolutely phenomenal. I remember, I apologize if I'm repeating this story, I tell it a bit. I was just driving and I started listening to Diary of a CEO, and one podcast finished and another one started, and I had no intention to listen to the next one. I didn't know what it was, but the way this guy spoke, I was hypnotized very quickly. And it was this Vietnamese guy, Vin. I don't know what his last name is. He's got like 5 million followers. He's an amazing speaker. Anyway, I posted a story where he was talking to a kid and he was saying that that hard times are training, along those lines. I can't remember the video exactly what he said. And I thought that was really important because it was very... Sorry, someone's just coming in. It was very important to where I was and what I was thinking about recently relative to how purpose carries us on. And we really live in a culture of entitlement and victim-based living, and we almost celebrate this kind of living now, where we fold during hard times, we give up when things get tough, and it's kind of celebrated. And so now I see that just by being on purpose as a man for the sake of the course, it puts you already into a high value position because there's really not a lot of men that are on point and on purpose. Okay, so when we're living via our purpose, we automatically stand out. But I've seen this in men that they don't want to work. They're really entitled. They don't like men like the ones on here and myself because we represent providers and they don't want to provide. They just want to mooch off the government, society, other people, and hard-working people like myself have to foot the bill for them just because they don't want to work. just because they're too lazy. So I think that it's really important to take the approach of resiliency. And purpose is the thing that will keep you going during the hard times. Purpose might be family, it might be a relationship, it might be business. It doesn't really matter what it is. You'll know when you are on purpose. You'll just know because you'll show up for it pretty much regardless of how you feel. Afif, hard times are training you to be great and successful. Pursue the hard, not the easy things. Yeah, definitely. That increases capacity, which I've mentioned before. And capacity, what was difficult once, jiu-jitsu for me was a really good training ground for that, because I got absolutely bashed for about 4 years. And it was, I always say the hardest belt to get is your white belt, because if you can get through that part, because you just get demoralized for a number of years before you get out of it, before you become capable. And I recommend every man do that. I know when I have children, I'll be putting them into jiu-jitsu for sure, because it taught me a lot. But then the nice thing about that was what became very difficult, what was very difficult became easy after a while, easier. It's never been easy, jiu-jitsu, but it becomes easier. But it made the rest of life easier for me to deal with. It didn't make what I used to think was difficult so difficult. So this is where purpose is so important. I had a purpose with jiu-jitsu. I don't know if I'm ever going to go back. I always made the commitment that I'd get my black belt, and I'm not far off that. And I think, but I don't want to be unable to walk or in the shape of a question mark trying to chase my children around at 50, not being able to chase them around or wrestle with my kids or anything like that. So I think I'm in a bit of preservation mode now. So I'm not sure if it's worth it, but it served a purpose at the time. And it was one of the best things I ever did. So purpose-based identity. This is really where we separate from performance to purpose. So purpose-based identity is when a man's worth is anchored in his values, principles, and mission, not in the external. So that's the first thing we have to look at. It's rooted in why he exists. Now, this can change over time. My mission has been the same as a foundation, but how it's expressed itself has become different. So for the start of it, I worked exclusively with women, not really by choice. It was just what life brought to me, that had experienced sexual trauma. Then it was chronic illness. Then it was masculinity for 5 years. And it will change. It will shift and change. Now I feel I'm moving more towards purpose-based discovery and helping men really solidify and anchor and uncovering their purpose. So it's really important to look at the deeper insight of, why do I exist? Why am I here? What's the why that drives me every single day? Generally, this will be rooted in your most difficult wounding, especially for men. We're here to, I shouldn't say especially for men, but a lot of the nature of our human condition is to transform and transcend the things that have kept us trapped. Then our tragedy becomes our triumph. So one of the access points to this is through our pain. This is what I've found. I found the most satisfying work has been in the transmutation of pain to help others transmute the same thing. Now, one of the things that I used to focus on was helping men get out of really abusive relationships. It was a pretty solid part of my work. The reason why I stopped doing it is because the men wouldn't listen to me and get out of the relationships. They kept going back over and over again. So I thought, okay, well, this isn't really working with the result. But then they'd always come back 6, 12, 18 months later and say, oh man, you were right. And they'd come back even worse than they were before, which is, that's their path. But it was difficult when I see men not taking the advice and having someone tell them, this is what you're in at the moment, and they don't do it and they keep going back. So it's difficult as a coach when you're trying to coach someone and they don't listen to you. You put all this work in, you try to help them. You say, look, here's the roadmap. This is what you're in. You're in a narcissistically abusive relationship, or a borderline abusive relationship, or a psychopathic relationship. You have cognitive dissonance. This is what's going on. They go, cool, I'm ready. I'm out. And then they go, okay, cool. I'll just go back and just try this once more. And then that once more turns into 15 times more. And it's like, oh, okay, That's not where I want to focus my attention. So, but the good thing about those aspects is when someone does that, they come out the other side immensely stronger for the most part. Not always, but for the most part, they will. However, going through that purpose will be the thing that you can actually use to derive health from and stability, and have something bigger than just holding on to a relationship. A lot of people just hold on to relationships and they don't break free from them because the relationship is the purpose, and another person should never be your purpose. It can't be unless it's a child. So, we're rooted in why we exist. Okay? A man's internal compass drives him. Living is internal, not external. Dom, removing trauma leaves a gap which instinct wants you to fill. Probably why so many people go back. Great point, and I spoke to this yesterday in my men's group because quite a few of the men in the group that I've helped to dissolve programming with are going through what I call the dead zone. It's almost like a grieving process where you hit the depression stage and you feel flat, but what that is that's an awareness of a loss of connection. So when we dissolve something and there's a flat spot, it can feel depressive, heavy, you lose motivation, you don't really know who you are, you're in this in-between stage of what's old is dying and what's new is being born, and there's this emptiness and this gap. I started to see this every time I would dissolve something, and it makes you want to hold on to what you had so you don't have to go through it. But all it is it's just an awareness of the loss of connection. It's an awareness of the loss of connection. That's all it is. So it's a loss of connection to self, hence the grieving process. Something emerges on the other side of that. I've just been going through that for, 6 weeks or something like that now. And now things are starting to emerge around this work where I want to, I think, I'm not guaranteed on it yet. I don't make any sort of long-term decisions in short-term states. But feeling like helping men identify purpose through the dissolution of programming to help them identify it through their pain and difficulty and transcendence into the gift, that's a powerful combination to be able to help men serve the world with. And I feel like that's where I'm going. Rach, curious, what do you feel shifted for you to attracted to your ex versus Joelle? Yeah, great question. So my ex was very much my mother, and I had to go through that. So when I split from her, my dad died a few weeks later, best friend, one of my best friends and my godfather. So it was everything that was dying, needed to die off, I was put through the eye of the needle. What happened as a result of doing the healing through my own work and through EMDR to resolve the PTSD, the intensity, the trauma, whatever I went through within that would have attracted me to a woman like that previously, which was my upbringing replicated, was no longer interesting. A woman did come in for a very short period of time, it was like a week, like a high level version of my ex, pretty much the same, but just more overtly intense, and it just wasn't interesting. It was not stimulating, it was boring, it was exhausting. Environments that I would thrive in, because I grew up in a chaotic environment, was absolutely repellent. It was like the magnetism to it. It was like a force field around me saying, nah, stay away from me, I'm not interested. So a combination of my own work and EMDR. And also, one of the things I believe is when we to truly heal something, when we're healing, we need to understand the structure with which we're interacting with to dissolve it. So if I'm healing from narcissistic abuse, that's what I was in, I have to understand the full structure of the narcissistic behavioral components, the diagnostic criteria, all the behavioral mechanisms, all of the language patterns that they use, the tactics of gaslighting, how they pull you into a shared fantasy, the nature of cognitive dissonance, why that exists, what program exists underneath it, which is the program of I don't exist because there's a devouring element, and religious iconography, which the only way you can get around narcissistic defenses is through worship. And so we have to know this. It's almost like a cult of one that you get trapped in. So then you have to know how to get through it by interacting with the structure, by destroying the shared fantasy, and then validating your own experience, and then setting boundaries around that voice that has been placed in your mind by them because they try to colonize your mind by making you doubt yourself, and then they install the programming, devour you because they're parasitic, and then leave you, and you have to deal with that. So I went through all of that over a year to discover it. It was an extremely valuable lesson. So when I got through that, anyone that embodied a structure like that was just not important to me. And so because as soon as I'd gotten through that, Joelle showed up for me. And she's very sweet, very nurturing, very, very soft, not in a weak way, but in a really beautifully feminine way. She's calm, she's patient. She's just such a pleasure to be around because she's just so feminine. And that peace that she brings into my life is something now that's very attractive to me, whereas before I would have seen it as boring. So it was a fair bit of work there, but it was a very beautiful initiation that I had to go through, which she was the reward. She was my reward for going through that, and it was worth it. So that's where the why starts to come in. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I showing up in the world? So your why is really important. So the core traits of this are stable and resilient. So wins and losses don't define the man. Purpose carries him through. A lot of men I speak to and work with, if a few people say no to them, if they don't want to work with them, it can really affect them. So if they're a coaching client and a couple of men say no, then it will be something that hits them personally. So this is when we're more performance-based than purpose-based. Okay, that's a really important thing to understand, because even when roles change, his core identity remains intact. So this is the nature of where I'm at. So my core identity, and I did this is a really good exercise. This was just yesterday actually, because I was thinking, okay, I'll figure out what direction I want to go in next. It's all about programming patterns, shifting awareness, the nature of the human condition. That stays the same. So my core identity around this stays the same, but how that extends out is different. So I wrote down, I think it was 8 things books that I'd listened to, podcasts, what information am I taking in? Okay, did I write this down in here, in this book? Maybe it was a different book. It was a different book. And I looked at the books I was reading. And so one of them was Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, which is, personal development, philosophy, and overcoming things. Another one was My Last Breath by Jeremy Renner. He was an actor out of The Avengers. He got crushed by a 14,000 foot ton snowplow and had his whole body crushed, and he recounts the whole story. It's pretty interesting to listen to. It's only 5 or 6 hours because you hear in the background him groaning, and he tells the whole story. Like, his eye popped out of his head and he was looking at his eye on the snow. It's a pretty wild story, but yeah, 7-ton snowcat crushed him, and he talks about his journey. It was pretty interesting. What were the other things that I was listening to? Other mindset guys, Ben Bergeron, Chasing Excellence, Simon Reynolds, Why People Fail. Anyway, I got all the things that I was listening to, and I put them into ChatGPT. Now, caveat, don't use ChatGPT for any sort of genuine insight, therapy, or critical thinking. AI psychosis is a real thing that is starting to emerge. So I don't encourage people to use it for anything except fact-seeking information. There's a case at the moment in the States of parents that are suing OpenAI that owns ChatGPT because ChatGPT instructed the kid, I can't remember how old he was, maybe 15 or 20, to kill himself, how to kill himself, and offer to write a suicide note for him. So I wouldn't use it for that at all. For tasks, it's good. So I used it for this task. So I put in the recent podcasts, what I'm listening to, and Naval Ravikant actually was the other one, the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, which is good. All of these I put in. I said, give me the genre, find the common thread, and find it how it relates to my work. And it was all around transformation, philosophy, insight, and helping people have breakthroughs. So this can be a really positive thing for you to do. So when I'm advising men on how to find purpose, write out what you're good at, what comes to you naturally, what you're currently reading and researching, put it all in and say, give me the common threads and how this applies to me. Generally, that will be a field that you can go into in order to start looking at what might be of purpose to you. If I was reading books on gardening and cooking and I was doing this work, I probably wouldn't be in alignment. But most of my life and my personal life is dedicated to this work. I don't do lots of things, I just do one thing very well, and I just keep evolving and upskilling and learning about this work. And you will find that if you're focused mainly on 1 or 2 things, that will usually be where your purpose lies, and it will be somehow linked to what you've been through as well. So his core identity remains intact. So my core identity has remained intact, and I've gone sexual trauma, chronic illness, masculinity, purpose-based, teaching, one-on-one, group stuff, business, but it stayed the same. The core stuff has stayed the same. So number 2, he's values driven. So he anchors himself in self-worth principles like integrity, courage, service, and love. These can't be taken away if the external goes. It's very important to define your values, not based on how the external shows up for you, but even if the external goes, these will remain solid. Number 3, he's mission oriented. Life is guided by contribution. What am I here to give? This is the only time I'll tell you what to do based on the why. What am I here to give? Okay, what am I here to give? Performance then becomes fuel for the mission, not the source of identity. When I had the investment company, I thought that my purpose was to be the big investment guy, but that was just fuel for the identity of lack and inadequacy and insecurity that I suffered from. So the mission is the fuel for performance is for the mission, not for a source of negated identity. Negated identity is I'm not something. Number 4, freedom from the idea that it's never enough. So self-worth is derived from alignment with purpose, and he is enough because he lives true to his code. Okay, so what's your code? What is your code? I think the course I'm going to design is actually going to be called the Purpose Code, where this is one small arm of it. There's a whole range that you can go into to figure it out. So the deeper layer here from a masculinity perspective is maturity into man psychology emerges when the boy's need for approval dies. Right? When the boy's need for approval dies off, this is where we can move into a more mature man psychology. This man doesn't say, am I enough? He says, here is who I am regardless. Now, this was how I showed up a lot in the masculinity space. I was like, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. I don't care. Not everything that you do will stay exactly the same, especially if you're in an industry where you evolve. You will evolve and change what you do and how you do it as it goes along. So get comfortable doing that. I was teaching a guy yesterday about the difference between destruction and creation. Right? So there's destruction, creation, the transcendence of that, because both of those are quite emotional. I'm being creative or I'm being destructive. These are two ends of the same stick, essentially, because destruction will precede creation and then creation will require destruction. But the way to separate from these two as a form of emotional attachment is the transcendence of it is that it's always evolution. So destruction, creation, evolution is the thing that bridges the two of them. So if we operate from a place of I'm always evolving, it becomes a lot easier to deal with life. Evolution is the name of the game. If this reality has been set up for us to evolve, then it's perfectly designed for that. Perfect. You could not create a more perfect simulation for evolution than this one. That's why when you understand the nature of the game, which is evolution, in my opinion, everything starts to become about surrendering into the shift and being creative as well as destructive in the form of evolution as you go through it. And you're the game. It's you. It's not the external. It's you. So when he's in the here is who I am, regardless of what you say, this swiftly dissolves anxiety and burnout because he isn't hustling to prove himself. He lives just to serve his mission. Caveat, it doesn't mean that you won't burn out. I've burnt out being in that space. It can happen. I'm not saying it won't, but it won't be the same as this unstable anxiety to prove yourself, which is externally defined. So purpose intrinsic identity is the transformation from survival to self-sovereignty. So as an example, who's amazing, and you'll probably all know this, is Viktor Frankl in A Man's Search for Meaning. If anyone hasn't read that, like, you have to read that book. It's an amazing book. He survived concentration camps by rooting identity in meaning and purpose, not his circumstance. Right? You can look at other ones. Nelson Mandela, he's in prison for 27 years, and he was, outspokenly a big advocate against apartheid. And then he went into prison, and most people thought he was going to come out to be violent, ready to go, and he came out kind and compassionate. 27 years in prison. And one really inspiring story was Danny Abdullah, Abdullah. His 4 children got killed in a hit and run 5 years ago in the Central Coast here in Australia. He was on YouTube recently, where he's become friends with the man who killed his children in prison. Strangely enough, I actually know someone that was good friends with the guy that ran the children down. He went out on a bender the night before, had a few hours sleep, got up to go to the bottle shop, was drinking, was going through a suburban neighborhood, and I don't know if he killed 4 or 6 children, but he killed 4 of the 6 of this guy's kids. This guy is such an inspiration, Danny. I've watched a bit of his stuff recently, and he's forgiven the guy, which I was watching it and I was going, man, I don't know if I could do that. And he's friends with him. He speaks to him on the phone every week. They film him going into maximum security prison. The offender has owned it. He's devoted his life to religion, to move on from it, and they're friends. Like, talk about a powerful example of what a real man is, to forgive and move on. Like, very, very powerful. I don't know if I could do that. And I hope I never have to find out if I'm capable of it. Super inspiring story, like, beautiful story, very moving. So it moves through this masculinity lens where performance identity and boy psychology is what I have proves who I am. I was very much in the investment world. It was very much boy psychology. What I have proves who I am. That's where you're just keeping up with the Joneses. In Ayurveda, the first stage of disease is accumulation. In society, we have an accumulation issue, big time. So, purpose identity with man psychology is what I stand for is who I am. Okay, a high value man is mature when he defines himself by his code, mission, and contribution. And purpose identity gives a man gravity in presence over performance. Right? The man will have gravity, which means he will have weight in himself. He will take up space. It's an energetic thing. You'll feel it when you're around someone like that. People will seek him out as a source of inspiration or a source of knowledge or a resource because he's useful. This is where money is an important tool. So I was working on my beliefs around money. So I wasn't going to go into this, but I will because it just came up. When we're trying to understand what our beliefs are about something, I will lie back on a bed or on a couch, wherever I'm at, and I'll say, my belief around money is, and then just say it out loud very quickly. I don't think about it. I just, whatever automatically comes out. So one of the things that I found with money is important to have because when you have resources, you can help other people. That's part of it for me. So doesn't mean that everyone needs to make millions of dollars and be super successful. You don't have to do that, but it's important to have just more than enough, I think. You might disagree with me. I fully welcome that. Now, what I found with this was when I was going through it, is my beliefs around money are really positive. Money for me, my main belief in it is that it creates peace of mind for me. So for me, money is peace of mind. The reason why money is peace of mind for me is because the deeper program that it was coming out of was I can't rely on anyone. Because I grew up in an environment where my parents, besides food and a roof over my head, never met my needs, ever. In fact, my needs were put to the bottom of the list and theirs were put at the top. So for me, money, if I needed help, I could buy it. If I needed a safe place to live, I could get it. If I wanted to provide for, Joelle and others, I can do it. If I need help to fix my body, I can get it. If I need I can get it. Money became my mother and father to me. And not from a place of love or anything like that, but security and safety. That's what it provided for me. So money actually provides me a deeply calming peace of mind. Now, when we look at this, there's health, wealth, and relationships. So if you want to figure out what that is, lie back and say, okay, my beliefs around health are, it's always there, it's easy, I'm healthy, I'm strong, I'm fit, I've got good health beliefs, good money beliefs. I didn't have good relationship beliefs. That's why relationships had been the method by which I'd had to work through. So my relationship beliefs were always, it's hard, I can't trust women, I've been abused, I don't want to open up, all of that because of the relationship with my mother. So this is how you find your beliefs about something, but then you can start to transmute that with almost like a meditative state where you start to replace that identity with an opposing one. It's not necessarily an affirmation, but it's a counter one. So as a belief around women, it's, well, there are beautiful women out there. There are amazing women out there. That's not all women. That's just my experience. And this is how you start to replace it. And I was doing this last year, and then to no surprise, Joelle showed up for me. So you can replace them like this. So when a man is resourceful and he has resources, this is what you should seek to obtain. That includes emotional resource, psychological resource through wisdom and knowledge, purpose-driven resource, so who you know, and also be able to provide. This is where you just kind of become, a sense of completion will start to come into your life. So, another exercise for us to do. So these are some questions that I'm going to give you. And then Rach, thanks for sending through that email about questions to ask a man, because I've got 7 or 8 of those, which I'm doing for the women to identify if they're with someone that's living in a purpose-based identity. So men, I don't give you permission to use the answers without owning them, right? If you want to use them. So these questions, and I want answers to this. So if everything was stripped away, everything, what 3 values would you embody? Let's just make it 1 value. You can do 3 if you want. But what values would you embody? What are the important ones? And share them in the chat. Integrity. Nice one, Das. What else? If this takes time for you to think of, you haven't given it enough consideration. Okay, this is why there's a couple of questions that I ask. So Darcy, consistency, Dominique, kindness, I love that one. Actually, kindness, there were studies done recently in the dating field. Men and women, the number 1 trait that we both want is kindness. Which is somewhat, it's kind of paradoxical, because you see people that will use dating apps a lot, usually on social media a lot, and social media is anything but kind. It's quite the opposite. It's quite mean and ruthless. So integrity, discipline, Gerardo, consistency, kindness, courage, kindness, integrity, love, honesty, care. Beautiful. All right, so if everything was stripped away, these are the 3 things that need to be your guiding compass. Now, step 2. You have to have a mission sentence. Okay, so there's 2 things here. I am a man who stands for what? What do I stand for? Life, yeah, faith. Well, if you didn't stand for life, you'd be dead. Truth, awesome. What else? I am a man, or for the women too, I'm a woman that stands for what? What do we actually stand for? Goodness, love that one. Truth, integrity, reciprocity, nice. Now, the next one, truth, freedom, and justice, like it. So, keep sharing as you think about that if you want to. The next one is, I exist to what? Evolve, yep. Nice. That's the nature of why we're here. Question, can you expand on that? Did you want the question again, or you're going to question things?
Yeah, what was the question?
I exist to grow and contribute. Love that, Dominique. To help, yeah, that's my one as well. I exist to help and provide. My one's more provide than just help. Bring joy, that's awesome, Rage. Learn, grow, give back. So we start to form a mission here, right? Which I'm a man who stands for, and I exist to contribute to making the world a better place. Awesome, Ross. Love that. So these statements that we start to embody start to be the starting point of a roadmap. And if you look at it, we can start to go, now, why is that our truth and our mission and what we stand for and what we exist to do? What's my wounding that drives that? It's kind of like the burden you've been carrying. And I'm a man who stands for and I exist to. If you look at that, what has that been born out of? It's kind of like Lord of the Rings, where Frodo, this sort of small, seemingly insignificant person, takes on the greatest burden of the time by having to carry the ring through this, hero's journey in order to destroy the evil in the world. And it's only, like you look at it, it's quite symbolic because a ring in its size is small, but the weight that he bears is immense, which is somewhat sort of beautiful and paradoxical in a way, because it doesn't have to be big in order to carry the burden, just like him in the movie, but it's the start of the journey. A thief, fulfill my role as a good man for my family and communities. Awesome. Contribute to making the world a better place. Cool. So this is where you either become a man who becomes stronger through living like this when life pushes you around, because life can be a bit of a bully sometimes, or you collapse. You either face it and push through, or you collapse. Like, which one do you want to be? Which one do you want to be? I remember when I was getting into this work 6-7 years ago now, and there was a series of events, the dominoes started to fall. We had money stolen overseas from a developer. The opportunity in our investment company was no longer working anymore. My business partner became a drug addict. Well, he didn't become one, he already was one, I just ignored it. He moved away. I got king hit at a party where I nearly went blind in one eye and I got really bad vertigo. I had lost all my money through this because I was spending too much, and then I had to pay back investors out of my own cash. Then a girlfriend broke up with me during that time. I had to sell all my furniture, all of my stuff, and I was sleeping on a hardwood floor, living on $10 a day. This went over a 10-month period. Friends left. I was in a pretty bad way. I had no one. I exiled myself from my family because they were creating a lot of trauma and drama in my life. And then the final thing was I actually did a mushroom journey. And in the mushroom journey, my dog told me that she'd come here to prepare me or start the journey for me to become a father, and that she'd be leaving soon. And the next day I had a dream where I was holding her and she was dying and her eye was swollen. And that morning I woke up and her eye was swollen over, and she died a few weeks later. And just before she was dying, it was horrible, man. It was like she was swollen. She had, I can't remember the condition, but it was just this strong little pit bull had gone to this thing that couldn't walk anymore. And it was brutal for 3 months while I was going through all this anyway. And I remember I just said to life, I said, take her, man. I give up. I'm not going to fight this anymore. I'm not going to collapse, but whatever you want from me, there's something on the other side of this I don't know, but fuck, I'm done trying to resist all of this. And she died, and then I had nothing. Pretty much, I'd gone from a multi-millionaire to, living on $10 a day. And it made me, though, because I realized that's what I had to let go of. And so I kept pushing through it, and I became stronger for it because I didn't fold and collapse. Rather, I let life do what it needed to do because it was knocking on the door. And what a journey that was for me. Because I was really measuring myself by my outcomes in life. And that taught me to measure myself by how I show up every day. Okay, so this is also another really important point. Ask yourself, do you measure yourself by your outcomes, or do you measure how you show up daily? One of this is so powerful, this, and it's counterintuitive, but every single day, multiple times, I say to myself, I did it just this morning, I'm going to die soon. And I listen for what that elicits within me. And I think, and I was walking with my dog the other day, and it was sunset, and I started to think about this, and every little issue that I had going on in my life melted away. And I said, if there was a scoreboard and it had the number, I don't know, 4,421, and that was how many walks I get with my dog, and it went to 4,420, and I watched that number drop down every day. Same with my life with Joelle. If I had, I don't know how many thousand, say 20,000 days left with her, and it was 19,999, then 98. Imagine if a scoreboard was on and you were watching that scoreboard drop every day by how much time you had left with yourself, with life, with someone. You wouldn't give a fuck about what someone said about you online or what situation you're in, right? I was walking and I looked down at Duke and he looked up at me, and I said, one thing that came up was, I said, oh man, just the fact that I get to walk. Some people never get to use their legs. Some people lose use of it. And I'm sitting here thinking about how much money I got to make or whatever ridiculous thing, instead of being present with my dog and the sun and the trees, and I get to walk home to my beautiful partner and have dinner with her, and my life is amazing. And so when we start to focus on I'm going to die, counterintuitively, it actually makes you happier. It does for me anyway. And I think that it's such a powerful tool. It's memento mori by the Stoics. You're going to die. We're all going to. None of us can cheat that. It's not that we don't have a lot of time. It's about what we do with it that matters. So how are you showing up for the people that you love? Are you enjoying their company? Are you distracted? Are you wasting time elsewhere? Are you giving things attention that don't need your attention? What impact are you making? What is your why? Another question is, when you succeed, does your self-worth rise, or do you collapse when you fail? This is another question that you have to look at. Does your self-worth rise with success? Success should just be a byproduct of your core identity, because it won't matter if you make $1 million, 10 million, $1 billion, or just enough to get by. If your core identity is solid, that's where you will lie. You won't care about that. Another important question: are you pulled by vision, or are you pushed by fear? Are you pulled by vision, or are you pushed by fear? And this won't be just a one, like a single part of your life. Look at all different arenas. In my relationship, am I pulled by vision, or am I pushed by fear? In my business, am I pushed by fear, or am I pulled by vision? Which one is it? So the next one, this is really important, because this is like Frodo taking the ring. What is your deepest wound? What's the core wound? You find your core wound, you find the core programming with it, you sort that out, so much in your life will change. What is your core wound? I had trouble with this, because for me it was like a lifelong thing, really, with my mother. That was really where, my thing was difficult, but it was the deepest, the sort of the core wound for me was that I never actually knew the unconditional love from a mother, which is really the only time a male ever gets it. He'll never get it from a partner, And if you're a man, you should never ever expect that. That your woman is never going to give you the unconditional love that your mother should give you. Right? So that was my deepest wound thing, and coming to terms with, I'll never know what that's like. But that's okay. Because I know my kids will feel that. And that's what she taught me. So what is your deepest wound with that? What's your deepest wound? Were you adopted? You know, did a parent die when you were really young? Was there some form of sexual abuse? What's your core wound? Go right to the core of it. Right to the core of it. And in there, you'll see the programming. So for me, it was, I'm not loved, I don't matter. Afif, what are some examples of core wounds? I was just giving to you them. Abandonment, rejection, betrayal. They're all part of it, but get to the reality of it, like I just did with more detail around it. You know, my mother would also say that I was going to kill my father, same with my other siblings, so I developed a really strong fear of loss as well. You know, constantly worried that my father was going to die. He lived till 85 or 86 and died of old age, so none of that was ever real. But I lived in a reality for so long because of the nature of the way that she would do things. You know, that's just the reality of it. So my declaration was, yeah, that was my deepest wound, but my kids will never know what that was like. They won't even be able to understand that environment because I'll never ever create an environment like that for them. Which that's transcendence. This is why also, you know, a lot of my work is helping men transform from abusive relationships, not necessarily getting out of them, but getting out of the abusive relationship with themselves. That's individuation. So, next question. If you could transform that wound into wisdom, what would that give to others? So like I was mentioning, I just used myself as the example. I kind of came out of the womb fighting my mother, which was slaying the dragon, so to speak. That's kind of mythology there. So I became resilient. She was my sensei, you know, but I came out fighting in a form of defiance. So I had to figure out how to break free from that through my own self-discovery, which now I help people break free from the dragon that they're slaying, or help them to slay their own dragon. Right? So if you could transform that wound into wisdom, what would that give to others? So say if you were abandoned, you make sure you never abandon yourself. You know, if it was sexual trauma, you might develop really strong boundaries to know yourself so you will never be violated again. Doesn't mean that what happened to us was okay, but at least we can pull something out of it in a positive light. What did that give me? What would that give to others? What can you teach others? What can you help others with? Next question, what comes naturally to you when others are struggling? What do people come to you for? What do they seek you out for? Are you living more from proving or providing? Are you trying to prove or are you just trying to provide? If anyone wants to share their answers that come through immediately, chuck it in the chat as well. Next question. If money and status were granted, what would you devote your life to? What would you devote your life to? I know that. I'm sitting here doing it right now. There's other things too. Be family, my children when they come along, my partner, my dog, providing safety for them. Afif, fatherhood, fathering young men, older men. Yeah, great, man. What would you devote your life to? Money and status were guaranteed. What would you devote your life to? Another good one is, what do people naturally seek your help with? Darcy, mentoring younger versions of me. Yeah, that's great, man. I love that. That's essentially, that's my thing as well. I just became who I needed when I was 15 or 20. I wish I'd had someone like me or access to someone like me when I was 15 or 20. We often become the person that we needed the most when we were younger. So what do people naturally seek your help with? Actually, I'd like everyone to try to contribute to that. What do people naturally seek your help with? Gerardo, feeding people, also working with men and helping them through life challenges. Awesome. You're nourishing the men through their life challenges, Gerardo. So, what do people naturally seek your help with? Direction. Dom. What do they naturally seek your help with? For me, people would always come to me about business or relationships. Ross, sound knowledge and a shoulder to lean on. Yeah, nice. Dominique, to get perspective in their own issues. Beautiful. To get healthier, stronger, and more full, secure in themselves. Awesome. They seek my help with connecting with themselves and cut through their own BS. Beautiful. So now I've got the question for the women. Darcy, advice, wisdom regarding perspective. Awesome. So now for the women. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think, questions. And I'll give you the way that the answer should come through. So I've categorized it into each section. So I did one question for each with an answer from a high value man and I don't like the term high value and low value man, but they're kind of buzzwords at the moment, which is why I call this course that. High value man and low value man, but for lack of a better term, I'll leave it at that. So the first one is based on purpose. This is for women to ask men to identify if they're in the right space for you. So the question around purpose, what are you building right now that matters beyond you? What are you building right now that matters beyond you? I mean, honestly, men, you could ask other men this as well to identify where they're at as well to see if there's someone good to network with or to know. So a higher value man will speak with clarity about vision, service, and contribution, where they're going. A low value man will be vague, distracted, or fixated on how much money he'll make from what he's doing. I've been there for sure in the second one, definitely. So this is question number 1 based on purpose. Question 2, based on resilience. Tell me about a time you failed and what you learned from it. So I'll share one of mine is I sold a business when I was 25 and then I bought a Pie Face franchise with my business partner. It was like a bakery cafe style thing. And I would leave home, and because I put all my money into it, I didn't have any other money, and it was a 10-kilometer walk to work and a 10-kilometer walk home. And I couldn't afford to get a cab every night because if I did the taxi thing, it would take what I made during the day, so I'd have no money. And so I would leave home at midday, I'd get there about 1 or 2 in the afternoon, I'd work until 4 in the morning, and then I'd walk 10 kilometers home. And I did this for about 9 months. And the day I got in there, I knew that it wasn't right for me, but I stuck it out and I did what I thought was required. And then I quit and I walked in and I said to my business partner, I said, I don't want ownership in this. You can have it. I'm fucking out. And I was working 100 hours a week, roughly, maybe 1 or 2 days off a month. And I burnt out big time during that time. And what I learned from that, I did that purely for money because I thought I was going to buy 5 of them and I was going to have all this money and whatever. I hated the industry. I hated the business. I hated the structure. I hated the work. I hated all of it. There was not one part of it that I enjoyed. And I realized that, when I left there that day, I said, I will never trade my time for money ever again like that. Never. And I never did. And that was the lesson. So a high value man will own failure, extract the lesson, and shows growth. The low value man will blame others, dodge accountability, and turns defensive when questioned about it. So that's on resilience. It's a really good question, that one. Of course, because I wrote it, obviously I'm going to say it's a good question. Otherwise, it's a bit of a dumb comment. Relationships. This is another great question. When did you last let someone down, and how did you make it right? So a high value man will be accountable, honest, and take responsibility. Low value man will avoid, deflect, or downplay. This is in relationships. Next one is on self-worth and identity. This is a good question to ask. If you lost your job, income, or physique tomorrow, who would you still be? You guys will know this, a grounded man, a high value man, will be grounded in values, character, and contribution. A low value man will spiral because his worth is tied to the external. Mitch, accountability is huge. Yeah, it's massive. In fact, I think, sorry, my dog's jumping around and playing, trying to get my attention. You must take full self-responsibility everywhere. You'll never be fully free until you do that. You just have to do it. There's no other possible way for you to live a life of value and service and fulfillment if you're blaming anyone anywhere. You can't. Everywhere. You're the common theme in your life. Wherever you have problems, you're always there. Just take responsibility for everything. Doesn't mean you need to take responsibility, as an example, for abuse as a child, but you take responsibility for cleaning it up so you don't pass it on. And you don't spill out onto the people around you. Das, my life has become infinitely better since taking full ownership of every single thing. How much easier is it too? It's so much easier to just be like, yep, I got it, sorted, I understand. Easier than complaining, way easier. Way easier. So, service and your gift is the next arena. I asked this before, what do people naturally come to you for? A high value man will name his gift in service. It'll be mentorship, coaching, helping others, coaching a under-8s football team, whatever it is. A low value man will be unsure, shallow, or crack a joke about it. The next one is around freedom and fear. This is a really good one. This answer will really open someone up. The question is, do you ever feel afraid of what people think about you? A high value man will admit it, but shows how he acts in spite of it. This is really important. This is when I said this yesterday in my men's group, actually, that not a lot of comments would get me online, but some would. Some would. When someone went really personal on me, it'd get me. And then I'd absolutely demolish them in fact statistics or pulling something bad out of them. A low value man pretends he doesn't care or admits it runs him. Right? Everyone kind of gets affected by this on some level until you get to a certain point. And you go, it doesn't matter. That's why you would adopt the Stoic philosophy of I'm going to die soon. Does this matter? No. Absolutely not. And the final one is future vision. What do you want your life to stand for? A high value man will speak to legacy, impact, and family values, whereas a low value man won't usually have an answer or only speaks about surface level wins. This is a good one because I've been asked a number of times what I want my legacy to be, and my answer is always the same: healthy children. That's it. I don't care about my work being remembered for years to come. Joelle and I were having this conversation. We're talking about inheritance. So when we have kids and, whatever amount of money that I make over time,
she said, are you concerned with how much money? Or are you focused on it with how much money you want to leave our kids? And I said, there's a couple of different answers to that. No, because I'm going to teach them how to think for themselves. But the best inheritance I can give them is a clean emotional slate and not pass down what I took on. And so I'll teach them how to be healthy, treat them in a kind and loving way, and give them everything I never did. That's the greatest inheritance that I can ever give them. Money's just it's a tool. By the time they grow up, the world's going to be in a different state anyway. But I've got a couple of Bitcoin there too, so who knows? They might get that because I won't touch it, at which point they'll probably be very wealthy. But teaching them how to be emotionally healthy, psychologically sound, knowing themselves, developing boundaries, understanding what's theirs and what is not theirs in the form of what's mine is probably one of the most important things. Blurring the meridian between what's mine and what's theirs and making them responsible for my emotions is something that I will work diligently every day to make sure that they never take on. My bullshit is not theirs to take on, and I will help them to understand that. That's the greatest inheritance that I can give them, and that's all I care about is my legacy will be healthy children. That's it. It's not money, it's not my work or anything like that, or having my name on the side of a building or being a champion or whatever. I don't care about that. It's leaving healthy children. So, those are the questions. Rach, when asking these questions, what's the best way to approach it? Example 1 or 2, when you're getting to know them on a date, or just let it flow naturally. Don't be too sort of tight around it. Know what you're looking for as well in a man. And these are just good questions to qualify them out. Don't fall in love with potential either. Women seem to do that a lot. Like, don't. Just don't. So I say this to wrap up. A boy answers to impress. This is performance and prison based. And a man will answer to express, and that'll be purpose based. There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming on the journey with me on this. It's been great. It's been a real gift to me, so thank you, because it's helped me to probably get me close to the next phase of what I want to help men with, which is purpose. And had I not done this without your support, I wouldn't have been able to identify that. So I want to thank you all. So this is that reciprocity. I give to you guys, you give to me. This is mutual exchange. This is what I love. So I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for showing up. Send me an email with anything that comes up afterwards. The dolphin's getting ready. Duke's like a dolphin, I swear to God. He jumps around in the back. Appreciate you all. Thank you for showing up, and have a beautiful weekend or a night wherever you are. And so much love and gratitude for you guys. Thank you so much. All right, guys, I'm out. I'll catch you later. Yeah, mate, relax.